I explore caves for a living. People hear that and immediately imagine adventure. Underground rivers, crystal formations, hidden chambers nobody has ever seen before. They picture documentaries, headlamps cutting through darkness, the thrill of discovery. What they don't picture is silence. Real silence. The kind that presses against your ears until you start hearing things that aren't there. The kind that makes you realize how far underground you really are. The kind that reminds you nobody is coming if something goes wrong. I've spent 15 years mapping caves across the United States. I've crawled through passages barely wider than my shoulders. I've descended shafts deeper than skyscrapers are tall. I've explored systems so large they had their own weather. Most caves are beautiful. Some are dangerous. A few are wrong. The experiences I'm about to tell you about happened over the course of my career. Different caves, different states, different years, but all of them left me with the same feeling. The feeling that some places underground were never meant to be found. The first story happened in Kentucky. At the time, I was 27, still new enough to think experience could solve every problem. The cave wasn't famous. It didn't even have an official name. Locals simply called it Hollow Mouth. The entrance sat halfway up a limestone ridge hidden behind dense forest. According to old reports, the cave had only been explored a few hundred feet before collapsing passages stopped further progress. My team and I were hired to see if any routes remained accessible. Simple job, or so we thought. The first 2 hours were normal. Tight passages, mud, a few small chambers. Nothing unusual. Then we found the footprints. Fresh footprints. Deep underground. That alone wasn't impossible. Other explorers occasionally visited undocumented caves. But these prints were strange. They appeared in a section nobody should have reached. To access the area, we'd crawled through a squeeze barely 16 inches wide. A miserable bottleneck. Nobody larger than a child could have passed through easily. Yet the footprints belonged to an adult. Size 11, maybe 12. The prints continued for nearly a mile, always heading deeper, never returning. At first we assumed another caver had beaten us there, until we noticed something. The footprints never overlapped. Not once. No left foot, no right foot, just a single trail. One footprint after another, as if something with only one leg had walked through the cave. Nobody mentioned it for several minutes. Eventually my partner Darren did. I don't like that. Neither did I, but curiosity won. We followed the tracks. That was our mistake. About 40 minutes later, we entered a chamber unlike anything on our maps. Huge, cathedral-sized. The ceiling disappeared into darkness. Our lights couldn't reach the top. In the center stood a stone pillar. Natural. At least I thought it was natural. Then I got closer. The surface wasn't limestone. It was covered in scratches. Thousands of scratches. Parallel marks. Deep grooves carved into the rock. Some fresh, some ancient, and all at exactly the same height. 7 feet from the floor. Like something tall had been dragging claws around the pillar for years. Maybe centuries. Darren was examining the marks when he suddenly froze. Then he whispered, "Did you hear that?" We all stopped moving. At first I heard nothing. Then it came again. A cough. Human. Faint. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the chamber. A single cough. Then silence. We called out. No answer. The cough came again. Closer. Then again. Closer still. Nobody spoke. Because we all realized the same thing. Whatever was coughing wasn't moving through passages. It was moving through open darkness. Straight toward us. We left immediately. No arguments. No investigation. Just packed our gear and started back. The cough followed us for nearly 30 minutes. Never rushing. Never changing pace. Always somewhere behind us. Always getting closer. We reached daylight without incident. But when we reviewed helmet camera footage later that night, we discovered something strange. The coughing started before we entered the chamber. Almost 20 minutes before. None of us had heard it then. Only the microphones picked it up, which meant whatever had been following us wasn't approaching. It had already been there, watching us. The second experience happened 4 years later. Nevada, a cave system beneath an abandoned mining region. I was working with 2 geologists studying groundwater movement. The cave itself was enormous. Miles of tunnels, underground lakes, multiple levels. Nothing particularly unusual. Until the fourth day, we were mapping a newly discovered section when one of the geologists found a door. An actual door. Steel. Industrial. Completely impossible, because we were nearly 6 miles underground. The thing looked old. Very old. Covered in rust. Half embedded in stone. No hinges visible. No markings. Nothing. It simply existed. Nobody understood how it got there. Or why. The surrounding rock showed no signs of mining activity. No blast marks. No tool marks. Nothing. Just a steel door buried deep inside untouched limestone. The geologists wanted photographs. Measurements. Samples. I wanted to leave. Something about it felt wrong. Maybe instinct. Maybe paranoia. I don't know. But while they worked, I noticed something. There was condensation on the metal. Fresh condensation. Water droplets slowly forming. As though the temperature behind the door differed from the cave itself. Which shouldn't have been possible. Not after decades underground. Then we heard knocking. 3 knocks. From the other side. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. One geologist laughed nervously. Suggested rock movement. Thermal stress. Natural causes. Then the knocking happened again. 3 knocks. Exactly spaced. Exactly timed. Not natural. Not random. Intentional. We left immediately. The cave entrance was sealed 6 months later after a collapse. Officially. Unofficially, one of the geologists contacted me years afterward. He admitted he'd returned alone. Couldn't stop thinking about the door. According to him, it wasn't there anymore. Neither was the surrounding wall. The entire section of tunnel had changed. Like the cave itself had rearranged. He never entered that system again. Neither did I. But the worst experience didn't happen in some remote wilderness. It happened in a cave tourists visited every year. A commercial cave. Guided tours. Gift shop. Parking lot. Safe. Or at least it seemed safe. I was hired to inspect several off-limits passages beyond the public routes. Routine work. Nothing exciting. The restricted section sat behind a locked maintenance gate. Nobody entered except staff. At around noon, I started exploring alone. About an hour later, I found a narrow tunnel leading away from the mapped area. Not unusual. Caves constantly reveal new passages. I marked my location and continued. The tunnel eventually opened into a small chamber. Completely empty. Except for one thing. A folding chair. A cheap metal folding chair sitting in the middle of the room. No dust. No rust. Perfect condition. Like somebody had placed it there recently. That was impossible. The chamber wasn't on any map. The tunnel leading to it showed no footprints. No signs of traffic. Yet there sat the chair. Waiting. I took photographs. Recorded coordinates. Then noticed something else. The chair faced a wall. Nothing else. Just a blank wall of limestone. As if somebody had been sitting there watching stone. I remember feeling deeply uncomfortable. The kind of discomfort you can't explain. I left quickly. When I reported the chamber, management claimed no such room existed. They assumed I'd made a mapping error. So the next day, I returned with 2 staff members. The tunnel was gone. Not collapsed. Gone. The passage itself no longer existed. The wall where the entrance should have been was solid limestone. No cracks. No openings. Nothing. My photographs still existed. The GPS coordinates still existed. But the chamber didn't. For years I convinced myself I'd made a mistake. Until one night, 3 years later, I was reviewing old cave photos and noticed something hidden in one image. The folding chair wasn't empty. Someone had been sitting in it. The figure blended perfectly into the darkness, almost invisible, watching the wall, and somehow watching me at the same time. I wish I could say that was the worst thing I've seen underground. It wasn't, because the final story is the reason I stopped cave exploration entirely. The reason I now refuse jobs involving unmapped systems. The reason I still wake up at night checking my bedroom walls. It happened in Tennessee. A cave discovered after a sinkhole opened beneath farmland. The entrance led to a massive network nobody had documented before. I joined the initial survey team. 6 people total. Experienced. Careful. Professional. The first day went smoothly. The second day, too. The third day, everything changed. We started finding markings. Symbols scratched into cave walls. Not ancient. Fresh. Very fresh. The scratches hadn't accumulated mineral growth. Someone had made them recently. The symbols repeated throughout the cave. Always the same design. A circle. Inside the circle, dozens of smaller circles. Like eyes. Hundreds of eyes. Watching. Nobody knew what they meant. The deeper we went, the more symbols appeared. Then we found the footprints. Bare feet. Human. Fresh. Miles from the entrance. That should have been impossible. No missing persons. No camps. No supplies. Nothing. Just footprints. Eventually the tracks led into a chamber larger than a football field. And that's where we found the journal. A weathered notebook. Half buried in mud. The first pages were unreadable. Water damage. Age. But later entries survived. According to the journal, its owner had become trapped underground decades earlier. At first the entries described survival. Finding water. Finding shelter. Searching for exits. Then the writing changed. The final entries obsessed over something he called the people in the walls. Nobody took it seriously. Not initially. Until we reached the last page. One sentence. Written over and over. Hundreds of times. They're getting closer. They're getting closer. They're getting closer. Then something happened. One member of our team disappeared. Just vanished. No scream. No noise. 1 second he was behind us. The next he wasn't. We searched for 12 hours. Nothing. No footprints. No equipment. No body. Nothing. Eventually we called for rescue teams. The search lasted weeks. No trace. Officially he's still missing. But that's not why I quit. I quit because of what happened afterward. 2 months after the disappearance, I received an email. No subject line. No sender information. Only an attachment. A photograph. The missing team member stood inside a cave chamber. Alive. Smiling. Healthy. Behind him, dozens of figures stared from openings in the rock. Human-shaped. Not human. The email contained one sentence. Just one. We found more room. I've never been able to trace the message. Authorities couldn't either. But every few months another email arrives. Always a new photograph. Always deeper underground. Always showing more figures. And every time, the missing explorer looks slightly older. Slightly thinner. Slightly less human. The most recent photo arrived last month. In it, he stood beside a wall covered with those same circular symbols. Thousands of them. And carved into the stone behind him were words. Words I still can't stop thinking about. Words that explain why caves scare me more than anything on Earth. Because they suggest something impossible. Something waiting beneath us. Something ancient. Something patient. The words said, "We thought you were exploring the caves." Then underneath, "We didn't realize you thought they were empty." The third story is the one I almost never talk about. Not because it was the scariest thing I saw underground. Not because anyone died. It's because I still don't know if it actually happened. And if it did happen, then something is still down there. Waiting. I was hired by a private survey company to map a cave system in eastern Kentucky. The cave wasn't famous. No tourist routes. No marked entrances. No official name. Locals called it Hollow Creek Cave. Most people avoided it. The owner of the property wanted a complete survey before selling the land. Simple job. 3 days underground. Nothing unusual. At least that's what I thought. The entrance sat at the bottom of a heavily wooded ravine. A narrow crack hidden behind thick brush. You could walk past it 100 times without noticing. My partner on that trip was a guy named Eric. Good caver. 10 years of experience. Calm under pressure. We'd worked together before. We arrived early in the morning. Set up a surface camp. Checked our radios. Loaded spare batteries. Food. Water. Survey equipment. Everything looked normal. The first 6 hours were uneventful. Tight passages. Small chambers. A few underground streams. Nothing worth remembering. Then we found a tunnel that wasn't on any geological records. That wasn't unusual by itself. New passages get discovered all the time. What was strange was how smooth it looked. Natural cave walls are irregular, broken, jagged. These walls weren't. They looked worn, almost polished, as if thousands of people had touched them for centuries. Eric noticed it too. Neither of us said much. We just kept moving. The tunnel continued for nearly a mile, always descending. always getting wider. And the deeper we went, the quieter everything became. No dripping water, no airflow, no insects, nothing. It felt wrong. Caves are never completely silent, but this place was. Even our footsteps sounded muted, like the darkness was absorbing sound. Around 6 that evening, we entered a chamber bigger than a football field. Our lights couldn't reach the ceiling. The beam disappeared into blackness, and that's where we found the footprints. Thousands of them, everywhere. Human footprints, covering the cave floor. Some old, some fresh, some small enough to belong to children. The problem was obvious. Nobody should have been down there. The cave entrance was difficult enough for experienced cavers. A child couldn't reach this chamber. Neither could casual explorers. Yet the entire floor was covered with tracks, all leading deeper. Not a single set coming back. Eric crouched beside one. Fresh, maybe a few days old. We stared at each other. Neither of us liked what we were thinking, because somebody had gone farther into the cave and apparently never returned. We debated turning back. We should have. Instead, curiosity won. That was our first mistake. The footprints continued into another passage, then another, and another. Hours passed. The tunnel never seemed to end. Eventually, Eric checked his watch. It was 8:43 p.m. We decided to stop, eat something, rest for an hour, then head back. I sat against the wall and closed my eyes. Maybe 10 minutes passed, maybe 20. I don't know. Then Eric nudged me. "Do you hear that?" I listened. At first I heard nothing. Then I noticed it. Footsteps, very faint, somewhere ahead. Not behind us. Ahead. Someone was walking deeper inside the cave. Slowly, one step at a time. Crunch, crunch, crunch. We froze. The sound continued. Steady, unhurried. Like whoever it was had no idea we were there. Or didn't care. I called out. No response. The footsteps stopped. Complete silence returned. Then something happened that made my skin crawl. A voice echoed from the darkness. Far away, barely audible. It sounded like a woman. She said, "Don't let it see your light." Then silence. Eric immediately stood up. He wanted to leave. I agreed. Neither of us cared about the survey anymore. We packed up and started back. Fast. No discussion. No argument. Just movement. And after 15 minutes, we realized something impossible. The tunnel wasn't the same. The turns were wrong. The walls looked different. Passages that should have existed were gone. At first, I thought we were disoriented. That happens underground. But then I checked my survey notes. The measurements didn't match reality anymore. Entire sections of tunnel had changed. Or maybe they had never existed. Neither explanation made sense. We kept moving. The cave kept getting stranger. Passages split where they hadn't before. Landmarks disappeared. Distances stretched. Hours passed. Yet we somehow remained trapped in the same area. Then we found the backpacks. 3 of them, lined up neatly against a wall. Modern equipment. Expensive gear. Covered in dust. One bag contained food that expired 12 years earlier. Another contained batteries manufactured in 2009. The third had an identification card. A caver reported missing 14 years ago. I recognized the name. I'd read about the case. Nobody ever found him. Yet his backpack sat directly in front of us. Deep inside a cave that officially wasn't connected to the system where he vanished. Eric started panicking. I don't blame him, because by then something felt horribly wrong. Not dangerous. Worse. Intentional. Like the cave wanted us to notice certain things. Wanted us to keep going. And that's when we saw the lights. Tiny white lights. Far ahead. Hundreds of them. Floating in the darkness. At first I thought they were headlamps. People. A rescue team, maybe. Then the lights began moving. Not walking. Drifting. Perfectly smooth. Like stars gliding through water. There were too many. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. And every single one turned toward us at the same time. Eric whispered, "Turn off your light." The woman's warning suddenly came back to me. Don't let it see your light. Without arguing, we killed our headlamps. Darkness swallowed us. Absolute darkness. The kind that makes you forget your eyes are open. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then we heard movement. Lots of movement. Not footsteps. Something else. Like hundreds of people crawling across stone. Coming closer. Very slowly. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear it. Every direction, all around us. And then it stopped, right at the edge of where we stood. Something was there, close enough to touch. Neither of us breathed. Neither of us moved. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Then the sound drifted away, slowly, gradually, until silence returned. We waited another 10 minutes before turning our lights back on. The floating lights were gone, but something else had appeared. Words, scratched into the cave wall. Fresh, as if carved moments earlier. 3 words, not the first. Eric stared at them, then pointed behind me. I turned. More writing, covering the walls. Hundreds of messages. Thousands. Different handwriting. Different languages. Different years. Some were dated, all saying similar things. It changes the paths. Don't trust the voices. We can't find the exit. It knows our names. One message simply read, I left with 3 people. Now there are 4. And beneath it, another hand had written, we left with 4. Now there are 5. That's when Eric grabbed my shoulder. His face had gone pale. He wasn't looking at the wall. He was looking past me, toward the darkness. I turned slowly and saw a figure standing at the end of the passage. Human-shaped, perfectly still, too far away to identify. It looked like a person wearing caving gear. I raised my light. The figure raised its light too. Same movement, same timing, like a mirror. Then it smiled, and I realized it wasn't copying me, because I wasn't smiling. The figure stepped backward into darkness and disappeared. Eric started running. For once I didn't tell him to calm down. I ran too. Neither of us stopped. Neither of us looked back. The cave became a blur. Passages, tunnels, chambers, hours of blind panic. Then suddenly, air, fresh air, cold night air. We stumbled out of the cave entrance at nearly 3 in the morning. Both exhausted, both shaking. We packed our gear and left immediately. No sleep, no second visit, no survey report, nothing. The company eventually hired another team. They never located the chamber. They never found the smooth tunnel. According to their maps, that section of cave didn't exist. I wanted to believe we'd gotten lost, hallucinated, experienced some bizarre psychological episode. Then Eric called me 2 weeks later. He sounded terrified. He asked me one question. Did I remember seeing a 3rd person underground? I told him no, just us. Why? He was silent for several seconds. Then he said something I still think about. When he reviewed the photographs from our trip, there were 3 helmets visible in almost every picture. Not 2, 3. And neither of us recognized the person wearing the 3rd one. After that call, Eric quit caving forever. I don't blame him, because I reviewed my own photographs. And he was right. There was always someone else in the background. Never close, never clear. Always just far enough away that you couldn't see their face. Standing in tunnels, watching from chambers, appearing in places where no human should have been. And in the final photograph we took before escaping, the figure wasn't in the background anymore. It was standing directly behind me, close enough that I should have felt its breath, close enough that I should have noticed, but I didn't. And that's what scares me most. Not the cave, not the footprints, not the lights. The fact that something spent 2 days following US underground, and we only discovered it after we got home.